Hi, I'm Ryan Macklin, and welcome to Master Plan. This is Master Plan 55 on doing Gen Con preparation for people who are working at the convention, primarily for like events people, exhibitors, things like that. And I've got a bunch of events people and exhibitors and things like that here at the show. So, ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce Adam Jury, Derek Gooder, and Jessica Price. All right, so let's go ahead and quickly just introduce everybody. I've got the little hangout window here that gives me a nice handy order that's alphabetical. So let's start with Adam. Who are you as a human?
As a human, I am an Adam, and as a game industry person, I co-own and work for Posthuman Studios, publishers of Eclipse Phase.
Cool. And you've been doing Gen Con under a bunch of different like hats and stuff like that over the years.
Yeah, I think this is number 16, but I running out of fingers.
And now we move to Derek. As the human and Gen Con person, who are you?
I am a meat popsicle, so no human here. I am the event manager for Gen Con, so I'm half of the event team at Gen Con, and I handle pretty much all the games, anime, film, stuff like that. Basically, if you're playing something, you're sitting at a table, it's probably me. And I've been doing that, I think, for 9 years now. And before that, I was running games for Eden Studios and whatnot.
Cool. All right, so we've got so you've been doing this for quite a long time, and you have the very inside track of here. And to contrast all of this, and I'm super excited about that. Jessica, as a human and game person, who are you?
I don't know. People at work keep telling me I'm an alien, so the human thing might be suspect. But as a game person, I am the project manager at Paizo, and I work with Brian.
So, and this is your second Gen Con?
Well, this is my second Gen Con working the show. I sort of stumbled in there by accident back when it was still in Milwaukee in like 2000 or 2001, but that probably doesn't really count.
So this is your second Gen Con with intent.
Exactly.
Okay. That's kind of a cool phrase to put afterward. Okay, so, all right, so again, this is about doing Gen Con preparation. The live show is happening, days before Gen Con. In fact, Derek, you're actually in the Indianapolis airport right now. You just got off the plane in order to do this interview.
Correct. It was very important. I flew in just for this, had to arrange my schedule.
Right, and then you're going to fly right back out as soon as we're done with the interview.
Yep.
Excellent.
We needed to be authentic and on location.
So that's the first on-location master plan. Fantastic. So, before we get into questions, of which I've gotten a bunch of questions, I've got a bunch of different bits of advice that I think is probably worth talking about. What are your top, 2 or 3 things that you, every year, you just keep telling people to do, and people constantly asking about it? So, again, I'll start with Adam. I'll eventually change it up.
The number one thing is make a plan. If you're going to be flying in or driving in to set up your booth, sit down and write down a plan. Like, we're going to arrive at this time. It's going to take us this long to get to the convention center. We're going to probably sit in the unloading docks for a half hour waiting to unload. Then we're going to do X, Y, Z. And the first year you make the plan, you will, hopefully get somebody's advice on specific things, and then you're going to find that stuff doesn't work or it doesn't work for you, and then keep revising that as you do more conventions.
Cool. So Derek, what sort of advice do you keep giving out to people?
The advice that I usually give out to people is to think about what you actually want to do with the show, and don't just do something because that's what you've done or that's what everybody else has done or whatever. Like, when you're trying to figure out your schedule, or you're trying to figure out your events, just walk yourself through the weekend. Like, how is this going to work? How do you want attendees to interact with your stuff? Who's playing your game? How do you want them to play your game? What kind of experience do you want them to have? Start with that, and usually, at that point, especially if you're a new person, if you just call me up and say, hey, this is what I want to do, then I can point you at somebody else who's done something similar, or give you some ideas, or let you know basically where to start. But step one is having a vision of what you want your presence at the show to be.
Okay. Do you have like any like specifics that like sort of like a one time recently where you've given some advice in that regard?
Yeah, I mean, so I spend way too much time on Kickstarter, as anybody who has my email address knows. But like I'll often like reach out to a Kickstarter creator and say, hey, I work at Gen Con. If you want to do something, let me know. And they oftentimes will just not have any idea of how things work. So there'll be a lot of like, this is kind of how the groundwork works. This is the baseline that people operate from. And then you have to kind of figure out, like, is your intent to get the most people through your events as possible? Do you want to give the best experience to your attendees as possible? Do you want them to play the game, or do you want them to get butts in seats? Do you want to do a mix of the two? How much staff do you have? How late do you want to run? It always kind of amazes me that a lot of people go to Gen Con and they don't really have a concept of what happens outside the exhibit hall. So they'll be like, oh, we'll just run some demos from our booth, or, like, I think I actually got a call from, that was amazing. Like, I had a conversation with somebody who publishes the games that got me into the role-playing community as a young kid, and they gave me a call a year or two ago saying, so I hear that there's this room at Gen Con where there's a couple tables that you can, like, run demos out of or something like that. How do I get involved in that? So it's kind of amazing. There's so many corners of Gen Con, I guess, that people don't know about and don't think of when they're kind of putting their plan together.
And later in the show, we'll talk about how to contact you and stuff like that, that we can loop around. So, Jessica, what advice would you give, or have you given like lately, to people who either new to Gen Con or new to like exhibiting, or just are freaking out about the show, as Twitter is prone to do?
Probably the biggest one, as cliched as it is pace yourself and take care of yourself. Staying hydrated when you're talking to a lot of people. I think it's warm in that exhibit hall. I was kind of surprised my first day at Gen Con last year, because we came in to set up and it was freezing in there. But, like 3 hours later, it was pretty warm. I think maybe if you've been to PAX or Comic-Con, you have a sense of how big it is. But if you haven't been to one of the really big national conventions, if you've mainly been to local conventions or whatever, you're going to underestimate how big it is. And there's so much to see, but don't wear yourself out the first day, because like you're going to be on your feet for 4 days, and there is time to see everything. And most of the places, most of the things you want to buy are not going to be sold out the first day. You have time to get there. You have time to buy the things you want to buy, play the demos you want to play, talk to the people you want to talk to. So don't try and do it all your first day. Don't worry that you're going to miss stuff. Go back to the hotel and take a nap for an hour if you're starting to feel down a little bit, because you're going to be exposed to a lot of germs, and you want to keep your immune system up.
So what's some of the advice? I mean, you're the one who's sort of the newest at this, so you might have some fresh perspective on advice you were given. Does anything like stand out in the regard of like little tiny bits, or like big things that aren't related to what you just said? Is there anything in that regard?
This is kind of specific to if you're working a booth and have shifts or times that you're supposed to be there. Find a lunch buddy. Like, find somebody who can leave before you do and get in line for the food trucks, or put your name in at a restaurant, because it takes longer than you think it's going to take to eat lunch, just because it's so busy, and the lines for food trucks are way out to, they're really long. And so yeah, like people warned me that an hour isn't really enough time for lunch, and it isn't always. So find somebody who has the shift before yours that you can kind of exchange places in line or whatever.
All right. So and partly to minimize any like random airport noise, Derek, I muted you when you're not talking, so feel free to unmute yourself as needed. Okay, so we've got some questions here, and we do have some general attendee questions that, again, I want to hit later in the show. But some sort of ones that maybe apply to all of us. Let's see here. Is there... Okay, so I've got a few here from Thomas Denny. The first one is, what's the most affordable way to get from the airports to the convention area? And I believe there's a thing called the Green Line that does that. Have either of you had any? Have any of you had any experience with the Green Line?
I haven't used the Green Line or anything like that. Pretty much all the conventions that I go to, I either will share a taxi with people that I know are arriving at about the same time, even if it means I have to wait at the airport, like an hour or something like that, just because it's more fun to travel with people, and then you can split the cost. Or a lot of the conventions, if you arrive during like normal hours or whatever, many hotels will have shuttles that will go from the airport to the hotel. I don't think Indy has that, but I do know that they do have like a ride-share shuttle kind of thing. So if you do a little checking on that, checking on the airport, there's definitely ways around that to make it cheap. And like I recommend that over the bus or whatever, just because it's so much easier. Which I guess isn't technically what he's asking because it's not the most affordable, but especially starting off your show trying to wrestle all your luggage through public transport is going to sour your day.
Right. I think that the Green Line is sort of built for that because it's meant for the airport, but I've not taken it because even when I did like the first couple of years I did Gen Con, I just found someone else in the taxi line like, we're probably going to the same place. Why don't we just split a thing? Just end up chatting strangers for a little bit.
It's a great way to reach out to somebody and make a new friend, especially if you're traveling to the show in a small group. I mean, again, like imagine if we're talking about exhibitors and event organizers and stuff like that. You're probably going to have a group of people that you're working with already. But especially if your group is smaller, if you want to make new friends, being trapped in a taxi on the way to the convention is not a bad place to do it.
Cool. All right. So, and some other ones from Thomas here. Oh gods, I need some caffeine. Is there any place near the convention center that sells Coca-Cola Zero for less than $3 or $4 a bottle? Yeah, I'd love to know that, to be honest, because I'm not sure what's even remotely not expensive near the convention center. Like I know there's some stores that you've got to go quite a hike to get there.
If you are a Seattle, or if you're a Seattle person in spirit, by which I mean you're somebody who requires near constant infusions of caffeine to keep you human, be aware that on Sunday, a lot of the Starbucks in the area close at like 2 p.m., which I know is right before everybody needs an afternoon coffee. So like make sure you get there. Starbucks in Seattle don't do that, so it was sort of a shock to us. But make sure on Sunday, which is it's gonna be your last day, you're gonna be tired, you're gonna want caffeine. But go out and get your afternoon coffee before 2.
Yeah, there's a lot of Sunday weirdness that will happen that people aren't expecting if they're coming in from other areas that don't really close up on Sunday. Adam? Or Derek?
Oh, he's muted.
I muted myself so I could give Adam a chance, and I would have monopolized everything.
Right. So Adam, do you have any advice in this regard about trying to fuel up on the relatively cheap?
I'm honestly I'm not sure about the relatively cheap because I tend to not care so much about that. At Gen Con, I'm kind of like, I'm on vacation, I'm working, let's it's one of the cases where I'm willing to trade money for time and happiness.
Yeah.
But what we always do is the Monday or Tuesday before the show, we will make a run to a warehouse grocery store and buy, 3 flats of Gatorade and 4 things of Red Bull and all that stuff, so we have it at the booth. And if you don't, and because we usually typically drive down from Chicago, so if you don't have that luxury, like if you're flying in, there's a CVS store like 4 blocks from the convention center, I think, Go there on Wednesday before it's super busy and buy everything you'll need for the weekend. And just keep that in your hotel room and take what you're going to need to your booth or in your backpack every day.
Right.
But don't rely on being able to buy yourself a 12-pack of Coke Zero, Saturday afternoon, because the other nerds will have it.
Yeah, the CVS that you mentioned, I think it was up near the Circle Monument Center thing. That was what I was going to recommend where people go to. That's what I use when I need to walk somewhere. Otherwise, again, like make local friends. Gen Con's been in Indianapolis for a while now, so there are a lot of locals. So if you have a friend with a car, you can go around and get a lot more options. On the coffee note, too, I'm not sure what its schedule is like on Sunday, because I know pretty much all the hotels have a Starbucks in them, but around the back corner of the building that's between the Westin and the Hyatt, there's a really nice little cafe called Patachow, which has really fantastic food. I have no idea what their coffee's like because I'm under coffee, but they have it, and I'm pretty sure that they're going to be open a little bit later on Saturday or Sunday, so that might be a good choice for people too.
Cool. And just so folks know, Jessica is
that you just gave away one of my places that was still kind of a little bit of a secret.
Yeah, I'm weirdly hesitant to also share some of those things, but people are going to find out anyway. So
yeah, Patachow's fantastic.
Yeah, they're really nice. I really like going there for breakfast. And I believe that if you get a coffee there, you can also grab one to go on your way out.
Oh, nice.
They're a self-serve coffee place. So I think they allow that, and you can definitely get away with it.
Cool. So yeah, it sort of also brings up tangentially a little bit of Sunday stuff, where you'll have to if you're say you buy too much stuff, there is a UPS kiosk in the actual convention center that will let you ship stuff home. Like everything else that involves the postal service, it's not open on Sundays. So if you want to,
is it? I thought it specifically was.
Really? I've seen it in years past. I've seen it close up on Sunday, or not be around on Sunday.
Yeah, they're a little iffy, but there's also Business Center, the FedEx Center in the Westin right across the street. That one's an option, and I think there's also one or two FedEx locations up near Monument Circle as well.
Right. Those ones will probably be closed on Sunday, just because if they're regular ones, I would assume. It's worth calling and checking if you're planning on using it.
It occurs to me it might also be something where you can plan ahead, because you could probably go to it and get a prepaid shipping label and whatnot on the Thursday, Friday, Saturday, or something like that. Get the box that you need, and then drop it off on Sunday. But also, I always recommend that people stick around through the Monday after the show, as opposed to leaving on Sunday if they can.
Right.
Things are way more relaxed. You have a lot more time to enjoy stuff, which then gives you the option of shipping stuff out on Monday as well.
And if not that, you can do a lot of pre-shipping on Saturday. Which I think it's to a bunch of questions have been regarding that particular arrangement, between that and having putting an extra bag into your luggage or things like that. The one bit of advice I'd say there is that that's a fantastic idea. I've done that in the past. Then airlines started hiking up the price for additional baggage. So be aware of what you might end up paying for if you have to check more bags than you were expecting.
Yeah, well, it depends on how much you're going to ship, because especially if you're going to ship something that's really, really heavy and you want it quickly, if you want it within a week or so after you get back, it's probably not going to be actually that much of a price difference between checking a bag and paying $50 for it,
right,
and trying to ship 50 pounds or whatever of shit to arrive at your house in any kind of timely manner.
Right. And we also have the limitations where a 50-pound bag on the airline will suddenly cost a lot more than a 49.9-pound bag, which I've run into when I've had to balance bags because one was 2 pounds over, and my bag, and like, oh, I'll just carry on these 2 extra books that make it over.
Yeah,
So,
I ended up doing that on the way home last year.
yeah, I mean, you fly. I mean, you go back to Chicago, Adam, but you then fly into what? Into Calgary, and then from there
Yeah.
travel back.
Yeah,
Um,
usually to Calgary, sometimes to Lethbridge. And that's more of a concern for people flying international flights or any sort of flight where like you buy a ticket with Air Canada, but you might end up on a WestJet flight or a U.S. Airways flight. Is you will get subjected to the baggage fees and policies of the airline you're actually on, not the one you bought the ticket from. So
right.
yeah, some of them are like, oh yeah, you get a bag for free, and you'll get up to the counter and they'll be like, yep, $25 for your first bag. So you want to keep that sort of thing in mind too if you're going to be hefting a lot of luggage back and forth.
Cool. Do you have any particular bits of advice for international travel to or from Gen Con?
Not specifically to Gen Con. I mean, international travel in general. Once you get, if you've never done it before, get to the airport earlier than they say you should, because you'll. It also depends on what country you're leaving from. Because like if you come into the States from Canada, you clear American customs when you are physically still in Canada. All of the airports have American customs people there, which is really nice because it means that you land and you're ready to go. But it means you need to be at the airport a little bit sooner. Yeah, I mean, I think all the other travel advice is pretty standard. Make sure you have your passport. That's important. Make sure you have the address of the place you are staying in the United States, because you need to put that on your customs form now, and the guy will ask you. He'll be like, "Where are you going to? Is that a hotel?" Or that sort of thing.
What about for bringing a lot of stuff to or from as well? I mean, particularly bringing stuff back from Gen Con. Do you have any advice on that?
Well, when you're bringing it back, like your country will have some sort of list of like you can bring so many dollars worth of stuff back if you've been out of the country for so long. Typically, I don't remember what the exact numbers are in Canada. I think if you're gone for 48 hours, it's like $200, and if you're gone for more than 4 days, it's 500 or something. And there'll be a space on your customs form for that, and just scribble it down. I normally scribble down $200 in games, and they'll sometimes be like, games, what do you have? And I'm like, oh, a couple board games. And they'll be like, all right, enjoy, welcome home.
Right. Cool.
The other thing, oftentimes, if you have shipped something, distinctly, like if you UPS some stuff home to you, there's a spot on your customs form that will say, have you shipped anything that's not accompanying you?
Mm-hmm.
And I've only done that once actually, and I ticked the yes box because I'm honest that way. And then I had to spend 30 minutes in line at a side queue waiting for the guy to give me a tax receipt form so I could get back the taxes I'd paid to ship that thing back home. So I don't know if that was necessarily a good use of my time, although I did get to eavesdrop on some fun Americans who didn't realize that you can't bring guns into Canada without proper declarations.
I'm loving the face palming there from Jessica. That's great.
America.
Okay. So
on the note of international travel, my girlfriend lives in Ireland and she travels to Gen Con. This is her 3rd Gen Con, I think. She's got a YouTube channel where she goes through some of those issues as well. So if anybody is actually traveling internationally and wants any advice, just search for Nellie's Nerdy Adventures on YouTube, I think. Mm-hmm. It's Nellie with a Y, and she's got a couple different videos about her experiences and what she's had to go through.
Okay, cool. I will make sure to put that in the show notes, which will require me to write that down and remember. And while I'm writing it down and remembering, so we had talked about where to get cheap coffee or whatever. One of the questions is about how to get fast coffee. So what sort of joints? So from Avenel Wing, a fantastic human with the double exposure people who are incidentally doing a event called First Exposure Playtest Hall, which is a cool thing that I recommend people check out if they want to check out sort of new up-and-coming games and seeing what the process is like. Where's the best place to grab a cup of coffee? If you're working the show and have a tightly scheduled lunch break, what's the best strategy for getting real food? We covered the lunch buddy thing, but let's assume that you are the lunch buddy, sort of being the first one on there. And in general, how can one avoid the hour-long waits for food? The food trucks help, but ellipses. So those are things that those are concerns that we all have, whether we're playing games and we're going to get to our game in the next hour, or we're about to run a booth in the next hour, or we're running a game in the next hour. So help me, friends. I have an hour. What can I do? Jessica, what did you do when you were forced to deal with this last year?
Like I said, I coordinated with people to, like, I'll bring you coffee back later if you want to, on your shift, which is before mine, get in line at this food truck so that when I come out, we can just switch places in line and you can go back. Coffee, I don't know, every coffee place we found, the line was out the door. I don't really know. I don't have good advice on fast ones. Just get there as soon as you can and be prepared to wait.
Yeah.
Ryan, which hotel lobby did we have that meeting in last year? Do you remember?
That would have been, I want to say, the Omni, maybe?
I think you're right. The Omni has a little Starbucks, and in my experience, that Starbucks is the least frequently populated because it's a little bit out of the way, and it's not a giant Starbucks. But my experience is you can get in there and get a coffee in like 10-15 minutes.
Yeah, and that's the one that we went to because we were staying in the Omni. So in the mornings it's not 10 to 15 minutes, unfortunately, but like during the middle of the day, it's closer to that.
Closes at 2 on Sunday, though.
Yeah, but it is closed at 2 on Sundays, so there are issues. Do you remember what times we went there, Jessica, to kind of get a sense of when it was crazy packed?
I want to say like around 2 or 3. Well, so there was always a big line in the morning because a bunch of people got breakfast there. Oh, and the other thing to know, again, maybe more of a concern to Seattle people, but it's like a franchise Starbucks, so don't count on it having the same things that you expect from like a normal corporate Starbucks. Like the type of breakfast sandwich I normally get that all the Starbucks here have, they had like some weird generic bakery, so just if you're picky about what you eat or drink at Starbucks, be aware of that. So yeah, in the morning, the line is pretty crazy because a bunch of people are getting breakfast there. I think we went back usually around like 2 or 3 in the afternoon, and it wasn't bad.
And I know all the ones that are like the Starbucks or whatnot that are on the hotels adjacent to the Skyway are all just murder.
Oh yeah.
So let's see. We've got some other questions here. I think I actually even have an interesting answer for that particular question because I've got one person who is a local to Indianapolis who knows a lot of really great places to eat, including it's a hike. There's an Indian place a little ways past like the Monument Circle. I'll have to find it and put it in the show notes. But it's a little slow, but it's not particularly crowded. So if you have a lot of time in the evening to kind of unwind, you're willing to trek somewhere, and you want some decent Indian food, I would definitely recommend checking that out.
There's a really good Mexican place too. We went there and the food was amazing. We were trying to like pick out a good tequila, and the waiter was like, "Oh, I'm actually from Tequila." We were like, "Tequila is a place?" Like non-metaphorically, but apparently it is. So you can get educated on good tequila and get a really good meal and good drinks there. So
Where was this? Now that we're releasing all of our favorite places to eat.
I have.
Was it the Adobo Grill? Do you remember?
That sounds familiar.
Yeah, Adobo Grill. I've been to, and it has you can get guacamole made at your table.
Yeah, yeah.
It was really, really good.
So,
I mean, my advice on food, like, I don't drink coffee, so I don't know where to get good coffee. My advice on food is go further out. If you spend 10 minutes walking further away from the convention center, you will make that more than that back up in the time you don't spend in line. But the trick that we always used is like basically to survive a con, travel in a group, and we would always designate one person to be responsible for going to get food. Oftentimes it was the person who showed up last to the HQ in the morning, and then basically everyone stays at the HQ. They have to go off and get all the food and come back and bring it back. Another thing to keep in mind is that a lot of the places around the area, I think like Noodles and Company and stuff like that, you can order online and then go pick up. So
that's fantastic.
Yeah, so if you have a plan, basically, if you had a group of people, say like 4 of you or something like that, rotate through the meals, have somebody responsible for going to get shit to bring it back, because then you don't feel like you're missing out on the show at all. You still get to eat. You get to eat good food. Have them pre-order. Go pick it up. If you plan ahead, you can get around some of the stuff like that.
Right, and Noodles and Company is great because that's one of the places that definitely has gluten-free options in a city that loves Steak and Shake as well. And I've successfully avoided Steak and Shake now for I think 2 years. Because I'm trying to watch my waistline a little bit, and Steak and Shake has got those cheesy fries that are horrible for you. Okay, so I've got from Karl Klutsky, who says that there's a new Marsh Supermarket in downtown Indianapolis, 6 blocks north of the convention center. Not only does it have real produce, there's a deli area where you can get ready-to-eat food. I've had lunch there, and it's pretty nice. The only downside is because it's so new, they're pretty busy at lunchtime. So that's an option that is apparently already pretty busy at lunchtime, so I expect it to be swarmed elsewise. And, it probably is for any place that you've not been to before, that you've heard about and are thinking about going to. It is, again, it's really worth calling to make sure they're open, and, even possibly getting a sense of how busy they are. Beforehand, and especially if they don't answer their phone, that's actually probably a good indication to not go there. We've talked quite a bit about food and stuff like that, because that's a big deal with Gen Con, is finding ways to actually be able to eat and whatnot. I hear that sometimes you can, like, if you can make a dietary case for it, you might be able to get a fridge added to your room, depending on what hotel you're in. But I've not actually done that myself. I'll drink the hotel coffee because it's there in the morning. But those are sort of my answers to like how to deal with that.
Hotels will provide fridges. They have a limited number of them usually. The policy will vary from hotel to hotel. A lot of times you can get them for medical reasons and stuff like that. I don't think you actually need to specify why you want a fridge. I think you can just say, hey, I would like a fridge, and then they'll let you know whether one is available and how much it costs.
Right. So I have one that is very specific. It's from Mike Myler, who says, so I'm holding a ton of material to the exhibitor's room, a TV that's boxed, a few boxes of books to sell, and a repurposed construction barrel to put on the TV on. Can I get away with putting my flashes on Wednesday afternoon and just hauling ass into or out of there, and then park my car at the hotel, or is the Metro going to ticket me or give me lip? And it's actually much more complicated than that. So for those of you who have done load in and out, what's the thing to tell Mike that he's missing?
Which day did he specify?
I think he specified Wednesday afternoon.
Oh, okay. I thought you said Thursday for a second. You can probably get away with that on Wednesday afternoon if you have somebody wait at your car. Mm-hmm. But the better thing to do is, as an exhibitor, you should have instructions for this from Gen Con. There is obviously a loading dock out back. And first you need to go to the marshalling yard and basically say, hey, I'm such and such from so-and-so company. This is our booth number. I need to take some stuff in. And they'll be like, all right, it's a 20-minute wait. And when your wait time is up, they'll be like, all right, drive into the back of the convention center, park, unload your crap. You have a half hour.
Right.
And then you can load it in through the back where there's plenty of space and where you're supposed to be doing it.
Right.
And that is the way to do it.
Right.
If you park on the street and try to quote unquote haul ass, you may well be ticketed.
Right, and you have to go through a lot of convention space. You've got to go through the hall. You're not just right behind the loading dock.
Right. You will. Yeah. You will not only you need to go through the hall, but you'll also be going through like regular swinging doors, which are a pain if you are pushing a giant, crate of crap.
Right. So that is the answer that I knew that Adam would be able to.
Another thing to keep in mind too, actually, is that the convention center has fairly strict policies on what you can unload yourself without having to get the decorator or the union or drayage involved, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of boils down to you can unload stuff that you can carry yourself. So if you're going to load up a cart and rush it through the convention center, you run the risk of convention center staff or Gen Con security catching you,
mm-hmm.
and then that becoming an even larger problem. So I wouldn't recommend doing it through the general halls if you have anything more than one human can carry at a time on their own.
Right. So really, do your research and don't assume that you can get away with something, especially if you're exhibiting. I mean, there are rules that I wouldn't say you can flaunt, but that are easier to flaunt, and that's among the rules that are not really easy to flaunt at all. Yes. I appreciate that, Derek. So for those who are listening later, Derek plugged his ears for my particular comment. And it sort of actually gets to a little bit real quick about the Gen Con alcohol, like sort of the general alcohol policy of hotels and convention centers and Gen Con itself. I would, do research on that before you flaunt a 64-ounce flask in public.
Which I'm sure you've never done.
There's way too many photos for me to pretend that I've never done that. But I have a post on my blog that basically boils down to if you do anything like that, be respectful, and when people call you on it, listen to them and do a little bit of research beforehand. And I also have a video on how to pack alcohol for flights that I will link to as well. Because, glass bottles are heavy. You're laughing at them.
I'm laughing. Priorities.
Yeah, these days I hope that other people will actually bring it instead, but I want them to then know how to do it. But it was the year.
There's anything wrong with those priorities, Adam.
And I should point out the one liquor store that's open kind of late in walking distance is decent but not amazing.
Yeah, that's a little bit on the north side.
I never know which direction is which in Indianapolis.
Okay. That's on like the way to the Indian place that I need to look up. So I will.
Yes.
Okay. So I will see about putting all that information in the show notes too. So we're getting near time because there's so many questions here that that I got. Let me try to get some of the
lightning round. Lightning round.
Yeah. So we're gonna do lightning round. Okay. What size bag should I bring to the con?
A big one.
A big one. Okay. One big one, two big ones. Like what would you do? I mean.
You talking about you? Okay, so are you talking about packing to bring stuff to the con or to walk around with? Because if you're talking about walking around with, small. Carry as little stuff with you as possible when you're walking around. Get as big a bag as you're comfortable with to bring your stuff to the show, so that you then check it or bring it back, whatever.
Right. Okay. Yep. So, and I'm pretty much the same thing. I have a roller bag filled with stuff that's easier to carry when I'm going to and from the airport. What about you, Jessica, Adam?
Before you leave for Gen Con, take your suitcase out and fill it full of books, and then try and pick it up and realize that's a really bad idea. Take the books out, put your clothes in it, and think about that experience when you are buying stuff at Gen Con to bring back home.
Right.
I'd say leave a third to half of your suitcase empty to bring stuff back in. So however big a suitcase you need to be able to have all the clothes and stuff you'll need and still have space, that's how big a bag you should bring.
Cool. And the bit that I would say, now I'm actually starting to hear an echo from someone, so I'm just going to mute everyone until I find out. Aha! There's the echo. The one thing that I would say too is that when you're, feel free to like pack that extra little carrying bag in with as part of your luggage, and dump everything out of every bag you have before you fly, because invariably you might have like a nail clipper or something in there that will end up getting caught by TSA. So dump everything out as like a contraband check. And feel free to unmute yourselves, everyone, because I think Derek might be the echo in that particular moment. So that was that, and slightly less lightning round than we're looking at now. We have what are things at Gen Con that are must-sees / must-dos? If we were going to go to Gen Con for fun, what would we must-see / must-do? I really want to do True Dungeon one of these years.
That's what I was going with.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've never done a True Dungeon.
Oh my God, we should do a True Dungeon.
This year, a bunch of the post-human people were doing Artemis, which is like a live-action Star Trek game that I think.
Yeah.
I got not quite roped into, but I don't know much about it, and we're just like, okay, let's go do this, and $40 to do, but I think you can rent costumes as well.
Yeah,
which sounds like more trouble than I will want to get up to on Thursday, but I'm excited to try that out.
Cool. Go ahead, Derek.
Well, I was just gonna say, that's the question that everybody asked. That have been buried in events for so long that I don't have any visibility to what's actually good at this point, or like the one good thing. There's so like. Okay, so my advice is, if you're going to Gen Con with the idea of what is the one thing I need to do, just put that on the shelf, because there are hundreds of things that you need to do. You will not do them all. You will not see them all. It is okay. You can come back next time. Get your program guide on Wednesday. Walk around the convention on Thursday with your friends. Just look at stuff, and you will find cool things to do. Check out the playtest hall. Check out the bands. Check out Killer Breakfast. Check out the parties on Georgia Street. There's a million things everywhere. So don't get wrapped up about seeing the one thing. Right. It's everywhere.
Right. I mean, there's all the organized play events going on. There's the Games on Demand that's happening at the Marriott. There's all sorts of stuff. I particularly want to highlight Games on Demand because it's a fantastic event that I used to actually help run before I was doing exhibiting stuff, and it's one of my favorite things to direct people to, because you can find a lot of games you've not heard of over there. And also there are so many panels. So if there's something that you wanted to learn more about, there's a panel for it. Go check them out. It's a great way to also take an hour off your feet.
So I guess actually on that note, if somebody is looking for something to do, if you go to our site, there's an option to download the event catalog. It's under the host menu, a couple other menus. On that page where you can download the event catalog, there's a subset of the catalog that is called premier events. Those are only events that still have tickets remaining, and either we personally found interesting, or they're run by a group that has a history of running solid, well-attended events. So if you're kind of overwhelmed by a lot of stuff and you want to just see what still has a spot available and is probably going to be pretty good, download that and check that out. And it's a way to kind of pre-filter to handle all the stuff that's happening at Gen Con.
How formal are the award shows?
Not that formal.
Yeah, I know the Ennies, a lot of people like to treat it as Gen Con prom, but Then there's also Ken Hite, who wears his Green Lantern and Hawaiian shirt. So it's a very comfortable place.
I mean, he rolls out of bed in that every day, I think.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that's Ken Hite formal versus Gen Con prom formal. Wherever you are in that spectrum. So not really, and like if you're going to like Diana Jones Awards or anything like that, it's a bar. So wherever you go, if you're going to a bar in a humid town, it's a very humid. It's a pretty humid place. So if you're not used to that, you plan accordingly. If you are used to that, you know what to do. So let's see here. Is it a safe assumption to figure at least one restaurant meal a day each day, budget-wise?
Depends on your budget.
Yeah, that's kind of a tough question. I don't, unless you're being able to bring your own food. I feel like every meal is a restaurant meal of some degree or another.
Yeah, I mean there is attached to the convention center by walkway. There's a shopping mall, and if you go to the shopping mall, there's a food court. And it is just typical food court food, but I suspect that's probably the most inexpensive meal you can eat,
Right.
that is, out of the convention center. I mean, even if you're in the convention center and buy one of their awful hot dogs, that's still going to run you like $7 or something.
Right. $7 and pain later.
Yeah, and no enjoyment while eating it.
Life is too short to eat that kind of food, people.
It
really is.
Said as a true foodie.
Well, yeah, sure.
And then I really feel like I'm qualified to answer this one. Is Gen Con made, quote, less fun without alcohol? So I'm known a bit as a booze hound, so I will actually say with authority, no, it's not less fun without alcohol. Unless you need alcohol to have fun.
In which case, you should get help.
Right. It's
a suggested issue.
Right. But no, it's I enjoy libations, but I have a fantastic time at Gen Con like every minute, every hour, and I'm not drunk during most of that time. So no, it's not less fun at all. In fact, I would caution against overindulging, especially if you're playing or running games or doing the exhibit hall or anything like that.
If you get really drunk on Friday, like Friday night might be really fun, but Saturday morning, you're making a trade-off there probably.
I used to be a Wednesday night get really, really hammered. That just makes the entire convention weird.
Yeah, over the years I drink less at Gen Con because I value my time more.
Right.
And that's just going to depend also on who you're hanging out with and what are you doing. If you are playing games till 2 in the morning, you might want a couple drinks over that.
Right.
But if you are, going out clubbing until 2 in the morning, you're probably going to have a few more drinks. So, do whatever makes you happy, and bearing in mind the happiness of other people around you.
Right. I mean, drinking is definitely a part of the freelancer culture and stuff like that too. But watch yourself. You don't have to keep up with other people. Don't sweat it. Do what you're going to enjoy, and do what you'll enjoy the next morning.
If you're like if you're like a first year, second year publisher, and you are trying to impress people, how much booze you can down is probably not the metric to be using.
No, in fact, how much booze you can buy for somebody else is far more important.
Good note.
No, but in that sense of like it's not a competition, unless someone's trying to make it a competition, in which case that's just lame. But yeah. So do any of you have questions that you like remember from your early days that you didn't get answered until many years later? This is the last lightning round. Is your own question. Kind of a crappy lightning round, I'm guessing, from the silence.
The questions I always had, I guess, boiled down to read the policies. If you're an exhibitor, if you're an event organizer, you probably got a mound of policies. They were sent to you. They were long, but they were sent to you for a reason. Chances are most of the questions you have are in there somewhere, and if it isn't, or if you don't understand it, you will get a much happier response to your questions if it sounds like you actually read the stuff you were supposed to read. So that I guess would be my advice.
It also sounds like you'd probably get a happier response if you asked before the convention itself.
Correct. Yes.
So speaking of, we were going to say how to contact you regarding events. So how does one contact you if they want to ask? I mean, particularly I think in the future about doing events at Gen Con.
So the best way is to just email events@gencon.com. I check that email address. That's the generic one. My official Gen Con number or whatever is 857-559-2420, I think.
Mm-hmm. Your Gen Con phone number as opposed to serial number?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah.
Like it just, it's the Google Voice number that routes to everything, and I make it super complicated. Okay. And then on site, just go to GMHQ or go to an event HQ or something like that, and either I will be there already, or whoever's there will know how to get in touch with me.
Cool. All right, and you guys will be at different places. So, Adam, where are you / Posthuman Studios?
Our booth this year is 559, which is kind of near the back of the hall by the art show. And that's probably the best place to find me all weekend too, because I get a little claustrophobic at Gen Con, and I kind of like retreating to the 20 by 20 square feet that I paid for.
Right. And the art show area is fairly quiet compared to other areas too, which is nice.
Yeah, it's a little lower traffic if you're out in the back.
Right. And Jessica, where will you find you and me at the show?
We'll be at the Paizo booth, which is going to be probably the first thing you see when you come in the main entrance.
Yeah, it's the
giant booth, purple and black checkered floor.
Yeah, I think that's like the Hall H entrance or something like that. It's the one that's on one of the corners. Yeah,
it's worth noting that it's worth noting that it's a purple and black comfortable checkered floor.
It is. It's
yes.
Yes.
So
if you're free here, go hang out.
Yeah. A little bit of advice to new publishers: don't skimp on the flooring. You will pay for it 4 days later. Okay. So
that's $100 you can spend just getting yourself some soft floor mats to stand on all day.
And Adam, you've actually listed a bunch of advice previously on your blog, which includes, and one of my favorite bits of advice is make sure you have enough condoms for what you'll need for the show, and to go for the CVS should you need them. That still sort of highlights that. I'll make sure that post of yours and any sort of follow-up information you have is in the show notes.
It's good advice wherever you're going, to be real honest. I mean, that's not Gen Con specific, but still needs to be called out for Gen Con.
Depending on what subculture of Gen Con you're in, it's really, really important. Let's be a little fair.
Speaking of linking to things in the show notes, if you want to include a link to the Game Master forum on our forums, okay. If anybody has general non-urgent questions about events, that's where I would recommend that they go, because a bunch of other GMs who are old hands are there. So if you're like, hey, this is something I want to do, or how does this work, you'll get a bunch of opinions even before you get the official answer.
Cool. And Jessica, do you have any final thoughts regarding what to do now that we're a few days away from Gen Con?
Get some sleep. You're not going to get a whole lot of sleep when you're there, so stock up.
Totally. Get sleep. Get hydrated. The 3-2-1 rule, which I think is more like the 5-2-1 rule of 5 hours of sleep, 2 square meals, 1 shower a day. I like 2 showers because one of them lets me decompress from people, and one of them makes me smell like a human being in the morning.
Yeah, 2 showers because Indianapolis.
Yeah, there's that too. So that's like scratching the iceberg, because there's so much stuff to sort of talk about and about this. It all depends on what you're doing. There's everyone on the internet this time of year tends to give a bit of advice. I'll probably put more advice on my own blog. But, of course, I do have one final question for all of you, and I'm going to go the other way this time. So, Jessica,
yes.
What is your master plan?
Oh, become Empress.
Become Empress. That's simple, concise, regal. I like it.
Thank you.
Derek, what is your master plan?
Survive until Monday after Gen Con.
That's a very hopefully attainable master plan, and I share it with you. And Adam, what is your master plan?
Well, my master plan is now to be on the right side of Jessica becoming Empress.
I
Excellent.
noticed you didn't ask of what, and that's good. You'll find out.
We will. And on that note, ladies and gentlemen, Jessica Price, Derek Gooder, and Adam Jury.